a basic skill of a peer minister, a basic skill of a gospel bearer out in the world, a basic skill of disciples, however you want to say it, is the ability to initiate that social contact with others, that ability to initiate relationships and go the extra step to be in relationship with others. So, to establish that caring friendship, we need to know how to start conversations. That's why we started talking about weeding. We need to be able to notice people who are shy or lonely or who often may lack those social skills themselves and they don't know how to initiate conversation, even though people are so lonely. Have you noticed that? People are so lonely and are in desperate need for real connections, especially with coronavirus. We are so lonely. And so, one of the ways that we can bring about the good news of Christ in the world is to help to ease that loneliness and just strike up conversations and be genuinely interested in other people. Some people, sometimes it's hard because we have big fears. I do. I have a huge fear of starting conversations with people because I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. I'm afraid I'll look dumb. I'm afraid they'll reject me. I'm afraid that I won't know what to say. There's a lot of fears. But we know that it's God working through us that strengthens us, that helps us overcome those fears and to take that step and say, I'm going to be in relationship with this other person. So we have to know how to start conversations and we have to know how to establish trust with other people. So for this session, we are going to be going inside stories and trying to feel what it's like to be the characters in those stories. And then you're going to get the opportunity to kind of make it up on your own what you would be feeling if you were that person. So we're going to do this with a real life story of a girl in high school named Mona. And then we're going to do it with a Bible story. And in each case, you get to pick a person that you're going to be in the story. And then as you're listening to that story, I want you to be thinking about, what am I feeling? What am I noticing about what's going on around myself? And what do I think this interaction means? Like, what does it mean about who those people are and who I am? So for our first story, you can choose to be a couple characters. You can choose to be Josh, who is the popular kid and kind of leader of his friend group. You can be a friend of Josh, sitting at the table with Josh, kind of watching what's happening and knowing Josh really well. You can choose to be Mona, who is going to drop all of her papers and get all but one. She's a little bit clumsy, a little bit of it doesn't have a huge friend group. You can be Pat, who is a brave bystander in the story. You can be the narrator. So I'm going to be somebody who's watching this all unfold. And I've got a couple friends with me who are watching this with me. One of my friends is Tim. And so you could be the narrator's friend, Tim, or another unnamed narrator friend who's watching this all unfold. Okay, so Josh, friend of Josh, Mona, Pat, the narrator, or the narrator's friend, Tim, or the other narrator's friend who's unnamed. Okay, here we go. How about her for the clumsiest girl? There must be a category for that. Now, I don't know who said it, but we all turned and looked at the girl who was walking towards the lunch area. She isn't that bad, I offered. Well, Tim, she sure won't make the graceful kid in the class, said my friend. And then someone else added, or even the 288th out of 300. Mona was her name. I don't think she could have heard the remarks, but it's almost seemed as if she had. Or maybe it's just that our thoughts were showing all over our faces. Anyway, as she walked in front of us, Mona glanced our way and gave a short little smile and shy, and she just mumbled, "Hi." And that's when it happened. When her books began to slip. For one crazy second, she was juggling all of her stuff in midair, and they fell, purse, book, papers, bouncing, skittering all over the cement at our feet. And then somebody laughed. Mona's face turned red, and she dropped to her knees and began to gather up her belongings. It looked like her fingers were trembling, and I began to feel a little sorry for the poor kid and just kind of wish she'd hurry up and get out of here. But when she was on her feet again, her face shiny with perspiration, her hair a mess, her papers all jumbled, a mocking voice stopped her as she turned to leave. It was Josh. The athletic, popular Josh, sure to be voted the best looking guy in the school. "Hey," he drawled, "you missed one." And his toe, in its giant Nike, nudged the sheet of notebook paper that had floated under the table where he and 11 other kids sat. The paper had sums and figures neatly written all over it, and there was silence. I mean, total silence as we watched what Mona would do. I think a few of us, including me, felt sort of ashamed by this time. Not big enough to say, "Knock it off, Josh." As I said, Josh is popular, very popular, big too. And nobody offered to help, not even so much as to give the paper a shove, although 24 feet were planted beside it. Nobody would help. And then somebody deliberately put a foot on the paper, smack right down on the paper, and then Mona hesitated. She, obviously wondering whether to forget the paper, to turn and run, or to crawl under the table in humiliation. And as we all sat there, sort of dumb-like, wondering, Mona, how she was going to get out of this terrible situation, a movement nearby at a table caught our attention. Without saying a word, Pat slid off the bench, walked across the lunch area, bent down, crawled under the table. Everybody froze. I mean, we were like statues. And Mona's face, it was white by this time and looking sort of sick. Like she might cry at any moment. And Josh's mouth, well, it was just hanging open in a kind of funny way. A ring of gawking faces circled each table. Pat, under the table, surrounded by tennis shoes of all sizes and shapes, and probably smelly, no doubt. Pat reached for that silly paper, and no one moved. No one blinked an eye as Pat backed out, stood up, walked over, tucked the paper into Mona's arms. Mona just kind of mumbled, "Thank you." She scurried away. Pat walked back to his table, slid into his pace, picked up his apple, and took a bite. That crunch, oh my gosh, it sounded like a mountain erupting, like just blown its top. It was so loud, but that crunch, it broke the spell. Suddenly there was just all this chatter and noise broke out, and there was a lot of shoving and joking, and we just went back to life and back to our life as usual.